Hello everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to have you here as we explore an important aspect of environmental compliance. The title of today's talk is Discharge Monitoring Reports, Essential Compliance Documentation. We'll be discussing what DMRs are, why they matter, and how accurate reporting helps ensure your facility stays compliant. Over the next few slides, we'll cover the key requirements, the reporting process, and best practices. Let's get started. Let's go over the DMR submission requirements. First, what do you need to submit? You should provide the original report along with one legible copy. It's important that both are clear and easy to read. You also need to include the complete EPA Form 3321, which is the standard form required for these reports. Make sure you gather all required monitoring data. This is essential to demonstrate compliance and accurate reporting. Additionally, your submission must have original authorized signatures, meaning the person responsible for signing off on the report needs to sign it in ink to validate the submission. Now, when should you submit your DMR? The key point here is to submit it by the date specified in your permit. This applies even if there was no discharge during the reporting period. It's still necessary to submit the report on time. Failing to do so, or submitting an incomplete report, can affect your compliance status, so timeliness and completeness are critical. Overall, understanding these requirements helps ensure your reporting stays on track and supports your ongoing compliance efforts. Let's take a closer look at some of the key fields you'll encounter in the DMR form. First up is facility information. This section asks for the permittee's name, their address, and if the facility location is different from the mailing address, you'll need to include that as well. It's important to be precise here to ensure all correspondence and records are accurate. Next, we have permit and outfall numbers. You'll need to provide a 9-character permit number, like AR123456, along with a 4-character discharge number. Such as 1A, these identifiers are crucial for tracking and referencing specific permits and outfalls easily. Moving on to monitoring period. This indicates the start and end dates of your monitoring activities, formatted as year, month, and day. Keep in mind, these periods can vary. They could be monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual, depending on your permit requirements. Finally, let's talk about parameters and data. For each parameter you're monitoring, you'll need to include the STORET code, the sample measurements you've taken, how often samples are collected, and the type of sample, whether it's grab or composite. Paying close attention to these details ensures your data is complete and compliant. Connecting all these points, understanding these key fields helps you accurately report your monitoring activities and stay in compliance. It also streamlines the review process and ensures your data supports effective environmental management. Let's take a closer look at understanding parameters and measurements. Parameters are basically the specific effluent characteristics that you need to report in your permit. Each of these has a unique STORET code number, which helps us organize and identify them easily. When we're displaying these parameters, it's standard practice to list them in numeric order based on their STORET codes. For example, BOD has the code 310, pH is 400, and TSS is 530. Now, moving on to quantities or loadings. These are usually measured in units like pounds per day, but sometimes you might need to do some calculations to convert raw data into the units specified in your permit. It's important to ensure these conversions are accurate so your reporting reflects true effluent characteristics. When we talk about quality or concentration, we're referring to how much of a certain parameter is present in the effluent, typically measured in milligrams per liter, standard units, or other concentration metrics as specified in your permit. Next, we calculate average values, which give us a sense of the typical conditions over the monitoring period. For most parameters, this is just the arithmetic average of all measurements taken. But for bacterial parameters, we usually use the geometric mean because it better represents the central tendency for these types of data. Finally, the maximum and minimum values tell us the range of measurements observed during the monitoring period. The maximum is the highest measurement recorded, and the minimum is the lowest. These figures are crucial because they help us understand the variability and ensure compliance with permit limits. Overall, grasping these key concepts helps us accurately interpret data, ensure regulatory compliance, and maintain effective effluent management. Let's take a look at some critical reporting elements that are essential for understanding your monitoring data. First, we have the number of exceedances. This refers to the total number of samples that have exceeded either the daily maximum, the daily minimum, or the 7-day average limits. If there are no exceedances, you should enter 0. It's important to remember, though, that you should not include violations of monthly average limits in this count. Next, we have the frequency of analysis. This indicates how often your samples were analyzed during the monitoring period. For example, you might see CONT for continuous analysis, meaning samples are collected and analyzed nonstop. Or it could be 107 for weekly sampling or 130 for monthly sampling. This helps to understand how intensively the monitoring was performed. Finally, there's the sample type. This specifies the method used to collect your samples. You might see GRAB for individual samples taken at a specific moment, or 24HC for a 24-hour composite sample that combines multiple samples over a day. If you're monitoring continuously, the sample type would be CONT. Connecting all these points, understanding these key elements helps ensure your reporting is accurate and compliant. It also provides a clear picture of your monitoring efforts, which is vital for overall environmental management and regulatory compliance. Let's talk about the signature requirements for your permit submissions. First, who can sign? It needs to be either the principal executive officer or an authorized agent, as defined in your permit. For more details on qualifications, you can refer to 40 CFR 122.22. Next, it's important to remember that every page of your submission must have an original, legible signature. Copies like carbon copies, photocopies, stamps, or scanned signatures are not acceptable. Only original signatures will do. And finally, the date of the signature is crucial. It should be the actual date when you are certifying that the data submitted is accurate. If you're submitting a revised Discharge Monitoring Report, or DMR, make sure to include the new signature date to reflect the most current certification. All these points tie back to ensuring the integrity and accountability of your submissions, which is a key part of the overall permit compliance process. When it comes to revisions, facilities are required to submit corrected or updated DMRs whenever errors are found, or if the enforcement agency requests changes. This is an important part of maintaining accurate records and ensuring compliance. Some common reasons for revisions include missing or unauthorized signatures, which are crucial for validation. You might also need to update the permit number, discharge number, or monitoring period if they were entered incorrectly or left out. Missing sample measurements or parameters are also frequent issues, as well as incorrectly calculated loading measurements, which can affect compliance assessments. Another reason might be missing information like the sampling frequency, sample type, or the number of excursions. These details are essential for proper reporting. Sometimes, the monitoring period displayed on the report could be wrong, requiring correction as well. When submitting revisions, there are specific requirements to follow. The revised DMR must include the original authorized signature, so no copies or stamps, along with the new signature date. It's important to clearly mark the document as revised, so reviewers immediately understand it's an update. The revised data should be highlighted or clearly indicated to distinguish it from the original submission. By following these guidelines, facilities help ensure transparency and accuracy in environmental reporting, which is key to maintaining good compliance standing and supporting overall environmental protection efforts. When it comes to self-generated DMR forms, facilities do have the option to create their own, but it's important to remember that prior approval from the regulatory agency is required before using them. So, the first step is to submit a request. This means contacting the agency and providing sample DMR forms that are clearly marked as sample and are unsigned. This helps ensure that the agency can review your format and content before you start using them. Once your sample DMRs are reviewed, they must meet certain standards. The forms need to be exact replicas of the official pre-printed DMRs, and the printing size shouldn't be smaller than what's already provided. This maintains consistency and readability. It's crucial not to start using these self-generated forms until you have received formal approval from the agency. Using unapproved forms could lead to compliance issues, so patience is key here. Finally, if your permit requirements change over time, you'll need to revise and resubmit your forms. Staying up to date and compliant is essential to ensure your forms continue to meet regulatory standards. Overall, the key takeaway is that self-generation is possible, but it has a clear process. Request, meet standards, wait for approval, and update as needed to keep everything compliant and on track. Let's talk about non-compliance reporting. Permittees are required to report any instances where they don't meet the permit conditions. This means if there's a violation, you need to provide specific details about what happened, why it happened, and what corrective actions you're taking. The key information you need to include is the type of violation, which could be related to a parameter, an outfall, or just a general description of the issue. You'll also need to specify when it occurred, whether it's a single date or a range of dates if it happened over multiple days. Don't forget to include how long the violation lasted, what caused it, and the corrective steps you've taken to fix the problem. Now, regarding the timeline for reporting, if the violation poses a risk to health or the environment, you must make an oral report within 24 hours of discovering it. A written report should follow within 5 days. This quick communication is crucial to ensure that appropriate actions are taken promptly and that everyone stays informed. This reporting process is a vital part of the overall compliance framework, helping us maintain transparency and accountability. It ensures that violations are addressed swiftly, minimizing potential harm and demonstrating our commitment to environmental responsibility. On this slide, we're focusing on 24-hour emergency reporting requirements. First, if there's an unanticipated bypass, that is, if wastewater bypasses treatment and exceeds permitted limits, you need to report that orally within 24 hours. It's crucial to act quickly to inform the authorities. Similarly, if there are upset conditions, situations that cause effluent levels to go beyond what's allowed, you must provide immediate verbal notification within the same 24-hour window. This helps ensure rapid response and minimizes environmental impact. Now, for maximum daily violations, particularly for industrial permits, if you violate the maximum daily discharge limits for pollutants listed by the director, you need to submit a written report within 5 days. This report should include details like what went wrong, the cause of the violation, the exact dates and times it happened, and what steps you're taking to reduce, eliminate, and prevent future problems. Overall, these reporting requirements are about transparency and prompt communication, which are key to maintaining compliance and protecting our environment. Remember, quick notifications and thorough documentation are essential parts of our regulatory responsibilities. Now, let's take a look at some additional reporting requirements beyond the standard DMRs and non-compliance reports. Permits often include extra provisions that specify other reporting obligations to ensure full compliance and transparency. One key area is compliance schedules. These require that progress reports be submitted within 14 days of scheduled activities. It's important to include actual completion dates and any explanations for delays, so regulators can track progress accurately. Next, we have pretreatment requirements. Industrial facilities need to report on pretreatment program activities as outlined in their permits. This helps ensure that industrial discharges are properly managed before reaching the wastewater treatment plant. Toxicity testing is another critical aspect. Results from biomonitoring studies must be reported on specialized DMRs, each associated with specific discharge numbers. This data helps assess the impact of discharges on aquatic life and ensures environmental safety. Finally, sludge management requires annual reporting for publicly owned treatment works, or POTWs, that serve populations over 10,000 or have a design flow greater than 1 million gallons per day. These reports help monitor sludge handling practices and ensure proper disposal. In essence, these additional reporting requirements are designed to provide a comprehensive view of facility operations and environmental impact, supporting our broader goal of effective water quality management. Let's take a look at the sludge reporting overview. Under federal regulations in 40 CFR Part 503, these rules are self-implementing, meaning POTWs or publicly owned treatment works must follow them without needing additional approval. If a facility meets certain criteria, it's required to submit an annual sludge report to the permitting authority. Now, there are a couple of key thresholds to remember. First, for population, POTWs serving populations greater than 10,000 are mandated to report. Second, for flow rate, facilities with design flows exceeding 1 million gallons per day also fall under these reporting requirements. It's important to note the deadlines. These reports are due either by February 19th or September 1st, depending on what's specified in your permit. For those operating in Arkansas, Louisiana, or New Mexico, EPA Region 6 is the designated regulatory authority for sludge. If you need assistance, you can contact the EPA Regional Sludge Coordinator at 214-665-6475. Understanding these reporting requirements helps ensure compliance and proper management of sludge, which ties into the broader theme of environmental protection and sustainable wastewater practices. Now, let's take a closer look at the sludge DMR forms. First, we have the Production and Use Form, or SLDP. This form provides a summary of the total sludge produced at a facility and details the disposal methods used. It's important to include all numeric values here unless they are not applicable, as this helps give a clear picture of sludge management practices. Next, there's the Land Application Form, or SLLA. This is used when facilities prepare bulk sewage sludge for beneficial reuse or when they sell or give it away in containers. Land application is a common method for recycling nutrients, but it requires careful tracking and reporting. Then we have Surface Disposal, or SLSA. This form covers facilities that dispose of sewage sludge in surface disposal units. This method involves spreading or depositing sludge on the surface, and it's crucial to document this process accurately. Finally, there's landfilling, or SLDF. This form is for facilities that co-dispose of sewage sludge in municipal solid waste landfills. Proper reporting helps ensure that all disposal methods are accounted for and managed responsibly. By understanding these forms, we can ensure transparent and compliant sludge management practices, which are essential for protecting our environment and public health. Let's talk about sludge monitoring frequency. The key idea here is that how often you need to monitor depends on the amount of sludge your land applying or surface disposing of each year. This is actually outlined in the regulations, specifically in 40 CFR Part 503 tables. It's important to remember that for each monitoring period, you need to complete a separate report. And in that report, make sure to clearly indicate the dates that define the monitoring period. When you label these reports, use a simple system like Monitoring Period 1, Monitoring Period 2, and so on. This helps keep everything organized and clear, especially in the comments section. Overall, this approach ensures you're consistently tracking your sludge application and disposal, which is crucial for compliance and environmental safety. It ties back into the broader theme of maintaining responsible and transparent sludge management practices. Let's talk about biomonitoring and toxicity testing. Permittees are required to test their effluent for toxicity as part of the permit conditions. This testing helps us determine whether the effluent sample dilutions negatively impact the survival, reproduction, or growth of test organisms. When we get results, there are a few categories to consider. First is a valid test. This means the test meets all the acceptability criteria follows the proper procedures, and passes quality assurance standards. Importantly, the data from valid tests must be submitted on the Discharge Monitoring Report, or DMR, for each species tested. If a test fails to meet these criteria, we call it an invalid test. In that case, a repeat test must be performed within the same reporting period to get accurate results. Now, if a test is invalid and the repeat also shows issues, we categorize it as a failed test. In such cases, 2 additional retests are required. If one or both of these retests reveal significant lethal effects, then we need to initiate a toxicity reduction evaluation, or TRE. The TRE process is an investigation aimed at identifying what actions are necessary to reduce the toxicity of the effluent. This involves submitting an action plan, a schedule for implementation, and quarterly activity reports to track progress. Overall, these steps are essential to ensure we're effectively monitoring and managing effluent toxicity, helping us protect the environment while complying with permit requirements. Let's talk about toxicity DMR reporting. When you see discharge numbers for toxicity DMRs, they follow a specific format. TX indicates toxicity reporting. The number 1, 2, or 3 tells you which outfall it's associated with, and the letter A, Q, or Y shows how often the monitoring occurs, monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Now, for pass or fail results, you report a 1 if there's a failure, and a if it passes, using the appropriate DMR forms. This simple binary system helps keep things clear and standardized. Next, we have NOEC, which stands for No Observed Effect Concentration. You report these values for both survival and reproduction, and they're expressed as percentages. These figures help us understand the threshold levels where no adverse effects are observed. Mortality percentage is also important. You report the percentage mortality at the critical dilution, along with the coefficient of variation. This data gives us insight into the sensitivity of the test and the consistency of the results. Finally, based on the toxicity reduction evaluation, what we call TRE results, and any necessary corrective actions, permits can be amended. This might mean changing biomonitoring requirements, adding compliance schedules, setting specific whole effluent toxicity limits, or even establishing chemical-specific effluent limits. All these elements are interconnected, and understanding them helps ensure we're effectively monitoring and managing toxicity in our discharges. Let's go over some common reporting questions that come up, starting with TNTC, or too numerous to count, coliform samples. When you're using standard methods 9222D and you get a TNTC result from a single sample, you should report it as TNTC, which means it exceeds the permit limit. Now, if you have multiple samples and you're calculating the geometric mean, you need to estimate these TNTC results. To do that, divide 60 by the smallest filtration volume in your samples, then multiply by 100. For example, if your smallest volume is 0.1 liters, you do 60 divided by 0.1, then times 100, which gives you over 60,000. This helps standardize reporting when counts are too high to measure precisely. Next, let's talk about counting exceedances. For daily maximum or minimum limits, you simply count each individual sample that exceeds the limit. However, for a 7-day average, the approach is a bit different. You look at each 7-day period and count that as one exceedance if the average exceeds the limit, regardless of how many samples within that week are over. Importantly, you don't count 30-day averages or daily averages as separate exceedances. They are considered a different category. Finally, calculating 7-day averages requires defining your week, whether it's Sunday through Saturday or another period. Then, for each week, calculate the average of all samples collected during that time. When reporting, you should note the highest weekly average within the month, specifically, the week that ends, begins, or contains the most days of the month. And consistency is key here, so make sure you stick to the same method for defining your week throughout your reporting period. Understanding these points ensures accurate and compliant reporting, which is essential in maintaining water quality standards and protecting public health. Let's talk about signature authority and delegation. First, who can be an authorized signatory official? Well, responsible corporate officials like officers, partners, sole proprietors, and for governmental entities, principal executive officers or the highest-ranking elected officials. For more details, you can refer to 40 CFR 122.22 and 40 CFR 403.6a, 2, Roman 2. Now, moving on to the delegation process. If the authorized official can delegate their authority, it must be done in writing. This delegation is made to a representative who is responsible for the overall operations of the facility. Importantly, the authorization must clearly specify the individual or their position, be submitted to the permitting authority, and be certified by the official who has the signatory authority. A key point to remember is that every Discharge Monitoring Report, or DMR, must have an original signature on each page. And if you're looking for sample delegation letters, they are available online at www.epa.gov/region6/6n/w/DMR, HTM. Understanding these points helps ensure that delegation is done properly and that all signatures are valid, which is crucial for maintaining compliance and ensuring the integrity of reporting. When reporting values below detection limits, it's important to follow the guidelines set out in the permit, unless otherwise specified. This ensures our data stays accurate and compliant. First, for standard procedures, we use the less than symbol, like 3 mg/L, based on an EPA-approved method. This clearly indicates that the actual value is below the detection limit. If the permit explicitly includes minimum quantification levels, or MQLs, and allows zero reporting, then results below the MQL can be reported as zero. This is useful for parameters where zero makes sense and is permitted. Now, if zero reporting isn't authorized, we need to do some averaging. For results below the MQL, we take the MQL value itself and average these results accordingly. For example, if you have values like less than 3, 5, less than 3, and 7, you would calculate the average as the sum of 3, 5, 3, and 7 divided by 4, which gives you 4.5. You then report this as less than 4.5. Finally, when calculating pollutant loadings for results below the MQL, we should use the MQL concentration itself. And to improve future accuracy, consider switching to a method with a lower MQL, one that can detect even smaller concentrations. By following these practices, we make sure our reporting is both precise and compliant with permit requirements, which is essential for maintaining data integrity across our operations. When it comes to rounding numbers and ratios, especially when permits require reporting, it's important to follow the EPA-recommended procedures to keep things consistent and accurate. Let's go through the key points. First, if you're dropping digits 6, 7, 8, or 9, you need to round up. That means increasing the preceding digit by 1. For example, if you have 1.06, it would round to 1.1. Keep in mind, if your limit is 1, this would be a violation because 1.1 exceeds that limit. Next, if the digits are 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you leave the preceding digit unchanged. So 1.04 would round down to 1, which is compliant if the limit is 1. Now the tricky part is when the digit is 5. In that case, you round to the nearest even number. For example, 1.05 would round to 1, which again is compliant if the limit is 1. This method, known as rounding to even, helps prevent bias in reporting and keeps things fair and consistent. Overall, these rounding rules are aligned with EPA headquarters recommendations, ensuring that all facilities report data fairly and consistently. Adhering to this method helps us maintain integrity in our reporting and supports fair comparison across facilities.